Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. This time we're going to talk some more about Jeskola Buzz, and in particular, the Matilde tracker. We've covered this in previous videos, but I've kind of glossed over the functions of the Matilde tracker. In particular, it is probably one of the more interesting and one of the more useful machines that Buzz comes with natively. It's a sampler that's also a tracker, which means that you can have multiple sounds going at the same time through one instance of the Matilde tracker. You can apply separate effects and commands to each track, and you can output the results separately into their own effects chains. It's a very, very powerful tool. So if you're new here and you're just now joining us, I'm going to give just a really quick rundown of what Jeskola Buzz is and why you should be considering using it. Jeskola Buzz is a full-fledged music-making environment for your desktop computer, and it is free and open source. It is probably a lot more powerful and a lot more flexible than the other options that you have out there for free right now. The only drawback being is that it was created towards the end of the 90s, and because of that, some of the features may feel a little bit more archaic. Maybe the user interface is not as graphically beautiful as the programs of today are, but I promise you this program is very functional, and you can create some seriously great sound with it. I will link my previous videos that I've made on Buzz down in the description. So far we've covered what Buzz is, why you should be considering using it still in 2021, how to record audio clips and edit audio clips inside of Buzz, as well as using an external program, and today we're going to dive deeper into the Matilde tracker. Somewhere in these previous videos I had made a little mistake, and a viewer had pointed out to me that Buzz can in fact work with 32-bit WAV samples. Before I was under the impression that Buzz was only able to natively load and play back 16-bit WAV samples, but as it turns out this limitation is not a Buzz thing. This limitation only depends on what sampler you're using to play back the WAV sounds. So as long as you make sure you're using the most recent version of Matilde tracker to play your WAV samples inside of Buzz, you shouldn't have any problems using 32-bit sounds at all. Again, I will link to the page where they host all of these Buzz effects and generators for download. You'll find that link down in the description below. So before we dive into Buzz here, a little bit of history on the Matilde tracker. It was originally created a lot earlier on in order to appeal to users of a program called ProTracker, and to give people who are more familiar with that environment some of the same features inside of Jeskola Buzz during its early days in the 90s. ProTracker was a music creation program for the Amiga computers, and it later got adapted to the Atari and some other different platforms. It was originally created in 1990, and as of now, it is pretty much completely defunct. So I'm not surprised if you haven't heard of ProTracker before. I haven't heard of ProTracker at all before, except through using Buzz. I'm going to go ahead and link the Wikipedia page for ProTracker too, so if anybody's curious, you can go and get a little bit of the history behind that. All you really need to know for this lesson is that the Matilde tracker is basically copying what ProTracker did and putting those features into the Buzz environment for you to take advantage of and make more cool music with. Okay, so let's get started here. Let's just go over in here to our list, make sure we're selecting generators, and we'll do a quick search. And the search is going to be Matilde, or until you have it come up in the list. So I have pretty much all of the Buzz machines installed on my machine. You may not even have this many options by default. Again, if you want to download more machines, just follow the link down below in the description. Anyway, we want the Matilde tracker number 3. Just drag that over here, and it will automatically connect for us. Let's put our meter in here really quick too. Again, that's Jed Shiva meter by Cyan Phase. Okay, and all that really does is it gives us an audio meter. You'll see later when we actually go to play some sound through this. Okay, so that's basically our setup. Now let's add some wave sounds to our project. Here's just some stuff I recorded on the mic really quick. It's not good at all. So we'll just select A, B, and C over here. Let's make sure this first spot in our list is highlighted. Click the left arrows to import those over here. And again, you'll see that we have our little editing environment over here. So if any of these are too loud or anything like that, then we just have a really simple way to just go through and just kick the volume down a little bit. And there's another way you can go about this too. If you highlight this parameters tab over here, it gives you a volume slider right here, and that just controls how loud the sample is that's loaded into this slot of the wavetable. Okay, all that's out of the way. Now we actually have sounds for our Matilde tracker to play. Let's skip over here to the pattern view. And then in the machine dropdown, we want to select M-Track. So just take you through the basics here. First, we're going to select a wave. This is our drop-down menu. We have A, B, or C. Just start with B just to be different. And now we want to select this one. It's right here, the first space, the start of this track. As you can tell, this is track 0. First space. We want the one that has 3 dots. That's going to be the one that allows us to enter in a note value. Entering in a note value is going to trigger the sample. So by default, we want to add in a C4, a middle C. And how we find this on our keyboard by default inside of Buzz is we just push the Z key, the letter Z. And you hear my beautiful vocal talents there. So I've touched on this before a little bit. When entering notes into Buzz, you can think of the letters on your keyboards corresponding to a key on the piano. That's with your lower row of letters, the Z, X, C, V being your octave 4 by default, and the next row above that having sharps and flats. And then the top row of letters, the Q, W, E, R being your upper octave, and the number keys are going to have sharps and flats for that octave. I'll go more in depth at some point. For now, just working with the sampler, you don't really have to do anything else besides just press that C4 Z key on your keyboard. You can have a little bit of fun playing this back at different pitches if you want to. So if you use a higher note, it'll play the sample back higher. That's pretty fun, right? Or we can go over here and change the bass octave and select 3. And now that will give us a 3 octave note here. And we can also stop these samples by just typing the number 1. The number 1 gives us this off command. And if we want to remove any of this, then we just use the period key. The period key takes them away. Okay, so going over all the different spaces here, we have the note name. We have the sample that's being played, which corresponds to whatever we have selected up here. And the next one over here is the volume. You can also tell down here on the bottom bar, it will show you what each one of these columns is for as you highlight them. So you see down here it says wave to use, it says note. We click here, it says volume. The volume, you'll notice the range is from 0 to FE. And if you don't know anything about hexadecimal, you're probably freaking out right now and you don't understand why there's letters mixed in with the numbers. I want to stop and assure you right here that you do not have to be a hexadecimal wizard in order to use Buzz. It's really just a numbering system. So as long as you understand that less makes less and more makes more, you don't really have to understand hexadecimal at all. I'm trying to think of a simple way to sum it up here, but it's basically so each one of these digits can represent up to a value of 16 instead of each one representing up to 9, right? So if we stop at 9, we can't go any higher here. But if we keep going in letters, then A will be 10, right? And it tells you down here too. Sometimes it'll just tell you what the number is in hexadecimal, right? So A is 10, B 11, C is 12, and you see it just goes like that. So it's pretty simple. So basically in Matilde Tracker, if we just put 80 here, that is going to play back our sample at default volume. So it seems kind of arbitrary. Just remember that 80 is like half of the possible value that you can have here. If you wanted to make it play back louder than default, then you would make this higher than 80. And if you wanted to make it quieter than default, then you would make it less than 80, right? So let's just change our bass octave back to 4, and let's just play this again hitting the Z key. And you can hear how loud it is. Now I'm going to change this to 40 instead. And you'll see that's just much, much quieter. That's just the volume control right there on that track. Okay. So also, this will go back to default. If you just hit the period key and you delete that, then it will just go back to using the default volume settings. Hit it again. See, it's back to the normal volume. Okay, moving on. Next, we have 2 slots that we can have effects on each track. You'll see down here on the bottom, watch what happens when I click on each one of these. This is effect 1, argument 1. Effect 2, argument 2. So basically, this will be what effect is happening on the track, and this will be to what degree the effect is happening. You know, every effect has controls and parameters, so this is just the parameter for that effect. And there's all sorts of different hexadecimal codes for these. It's not exactly wizardry. There's a list of all these commands I'm going to show you in just a minute. So let's say E8, and it'll also tell you down here, that's the sample direction. So let's just click on 1 over here, and this is just a trigger. So with the E8, the sample direction effect is on or off, right? So if I do this, then nothing happens, because I also need to make sure that it's playing from the end of the sample. Otherwise, reversing it is going to do absolutely nothing. So for our second effect, we're going to go 09, which is the offset, and this shows it where to start or stop playing the sample. And we're going to set this all the way to the end. So it's F, F to go to the very end. And now we'll try playing it. And that plays back my lovely voice sample in reverse. And if you didn't want it to play back in reverse, this offset command also will just start it wherever you want to start the sound from. So this can be useful if you want to skip a little bit of editing, or if you want to make some adjustments on your editing step. Let's say there's a little bit of silence at the start of the wave sound that you want to use. So instead of going into an audio editor and trimming it, you could just use this offset command in Matilde Tracker and just set the offset to something really low, like 1. Or if that still doesn't get rid of your silence, then set it to 2, and just experiment with it until that gap is gone from the start of the sample and it starts playing where you want it to play from. Okay, so now I will show you where to find this list at. It's pretty simple. You just go over here to the machine view, right click on the Matilde Tracker machine. All the way down here on the bottom, it says About. And not a lot of the machines have a cool About menu like this, but thankfully the Matilde Tracker does. And this gives you all of these different implemented effects. I encourage you to just get inside of Buzz and just check this out for yourself and see what all it does. So you'll see in the effect name, this is where I'm getting the OF or whatever. And then over here, it will just be XX. If there's just like one value that controls the effect. Some of them, like this volume slide, have XY. So in that second argument column, you would put your X argument in the first space and the Y argument in the second space. Anyway, there's a lot to cover there with Matilde, and it has a lot of features. So anyway, our next most useful feature that we have in Matilde Tracker is the MultiTrack Routing. This will be very powerful. So if we right click this little circle here with the 0, you'll see that it brings up a few options. Right now by default, we only have these 2 options. The 0, which is the mix, and 1, which is track 1. Okay. So let's do something about that. Let's go back into the pattern editor, make sure we're highlighting Matilde Tracker, M track, right click, add track. That's also Control plus. And then we add a few extra tracks. And now when we go back out here to our machine view and we right click on this little circle, you see that it adds an option for those extra 2 tracks that I just did. So now what we gotta do is go back over here to the pattern view, and we're going to put more sounds in these other tracks. So let's go over here, and let's make sure that we're selecting the right wave. We'll do number 1 for this track. Ba-da-ba-da-ba. And then we'll do number 3 for this track. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. Okay, and I know it's absolutely beautiful and my best vocal work that I've ever done. Let's just delete this offset, again using the period key to remove. Back over here to machine view. So now you'll see if we play this, I bet there's going to be a mess. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit because I know it's going to be a mess. Because again, we have 0 selected, so that's a mix of all those tracks that's coming through now when we hit play. Oh, by the way, we actually have to make it so we can hit play too. Sequence view, M tracker. By default, this is already in place. Let's just give it a little bit of room here. Let's Control E to make this loop section longer. And again, if this wasn't already set up by default, all we would do is come over here, and we would know that if we hit the 0 key, and that would put our only pattern, which is our pattern 0, into the sequence. If you don't get what's going on over here, then just go and check out some of the earlier videos where I explain this better. Okay, anyway, now we can hit the play button and stuff happens. My beautiful vocal harmony choral arrangement. It'll sit there and play on a loop if you want it to. Okay, anyway, we'll go back over here to the machine view, right? And now we'll start changing this. Now I'll make it so that's track 1 and see what happens. You can hear this, just that one first track coming through making sound. And again, demonstrate on the track 3. Oh, and what I did here is I just turned the looping mode off. It was getting a little bit annoying, so it would just keep looping over and it would miss where that sample is triggered at the start. So that's why when I'm hitting play, there's a little bit of dead space before you hear anything. Is because I had it in looping mode and it had to roll around to the next loop before the sound would start over again. Just like that, right? But if we turn this off, then it will just go there to the end and it will stop and it will put our playback position right there at the start. So then when we hit the play button, it starts at the right spot. Okay, I digress. So we can't just directly connect extra tracks from the Matilde into the Jeskola. We have to have some other machine to plug them into first, and then split the signal, and then route it all back into our meter. So just for example's sake here, let's find just a simple EQ plugin or something. Jeskola EQ3, all reliable. Just take a few instances of that. Again, this is shift, click, drag. Shift, click, drag. Just connect them all up. We don't need to do anything special over here. I just wanted to show off the routing. If you wanted to pop these open and do some different EQ kind of stuff, then go ahead and knock yourself out. This is just to demonstrate. Okay, so right click, select track 1. Right click, select track 2. Right click, select track 3. Now watch what happens down here in our Jeskola meter. You should see that all 3 of these tracks are operating differently. Let's make this loop a little bit shorter. Okay. You can see you can go through and remove or turn up and down each one. The point is that each one of these tracks in the Matilde tracker, you can send through separate effects chains. Whether you need that for your mixing or mastering or just processing, you know, it just opens up a lot of different possibilities for your signal routing. And that's really Buzz's strongest point as a music creation tool or a DAW in general, is you can do a lot of stuff in this node-based machine view visually and easily that would require just a lot of messing around in any other environment. So I think that's going to do it for this video. I believe that I've covered most of the high-level features that make Matilde Tracker awesome. Hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you can apply this to your own music making process. If you're a Buzz user, let me know down in the comments, and also let me know how long you've been using Buzz for. Or if you're brand new here and you haven't installed Buzz yet, or you're a first-time user, drop me a line down below. Feel free to ask questions and stuff. So at some point I am going to stop plugging it so aggressively, but I am brand new over on Patreon, and I would really appreciate it if anybody could find it in their hearts to give me a little bit of support over there on that platform. Basically how it works is for a super low monthly donation, you become a patron of my channel, and then I offer cool perks to anybody who is a patron. I'll provide a link down below to my Patreon page and give you more information about that down there. If you can't afford supporting me on Patreon, then absolutely no worries at all. I just appreciate that you had the time to tune in and check out my video. And just the simple free stuff like the likes and subscribes do a lot to help my channel grow. It's not just all about my fragile musician's ego. I'm just trying to get this stuff out to a bigger audience, and you have to kind of play the YouTube game in order to make that happen, so likes and subscribes and comments and engagements, it all really helps out, and I appreciate every little bit that you all do for me. That being said, enough rambling on about it. I'm gonna get out of here. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Hope you have fun out there.